The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's Justin from Toronto, Canada again, from Christie. And here we are today to talk about Widget Designer and web sessions. So for this webinar, if you want to follow along, you'll need the Widget Designer Unlimited version to be able to access all the features we'll be using today. I will have some links and things for people to join. So we can all participate in this webinar. And yeah, so here we go. So first we'll be using Widget Designer using Unlimited gives us access to what are called sessions. So we'll be touching on sessions. We'll be talking about clients and what clients are. We will be touching on some data conventions, just a review, a kind of a refresher for anyone who hasn't attended all of the webinars on variables and data conventions. We're going to be talking about how we store and recall unique values to a specific session, so per user. We'll be talking about groups and what they are. And we'll be talking about what widgets can be assigned to groups as well. Not everything in Widget Designer is compatible with multi-users. Of course, everything can be used, but not everything can be uniquely identified and addressed. And also for the widgets that are compatible with the multi-sessions, which values will be assignable to those groups. So what is a session? Well, basically, anytime a web browser or tab visits a website, a session is created. So sessions are usually stateless. So what that means is when you have a user, so let's say you're a server, you're a web server, and there's no way to tell one user from another. So you're in a big room, or let's say you're a banker, and you have 10 customers come in. You can't see the customers, they all sound the same, they all look the same, and you want to be able to tell which customer is depositing or taking money out. Now, of course, if you can't see what they look like, if you can't hear a difference, there's something else that you need to be able to identify them with. So a session ID is assigned to those users, to each of those clients. So every web service, including Widget Designer, will assign what's called a UUID, or a unique identifier, to each client, and that's stored inside of the Widget Designer. And so if you were to be that bank teller and someone wanted to say, I want to deposit this money or withdraw this money, and I'm Justin, the bank teller would say, prove it, and you would use your unique identifier to do that. So it's automatically assigned to each session. So as soon as someone logs into to a web session, it's automatically assigned. There's no extra work that you have to do in Widget or in any other web service. Most web servers, I think every single web server out there, will automatically assign that to you, to your browser and to your tab. And a client. So we talked about what is a client. A client is basically a browser. And basically, it's just a way for us to distinguish between server side and client side services. So a server is like the Widget Designer, something that holds all the values, that holds all of the information, the web pages, the pictures, the buttons, everything, and the client accesses that over the web. So whether that's a local service or sort of the internet, it's the same way. We don't distinguish. We don't really care in the Widget Designer or web servers whether it's online or if it's local. So each browser, each user is a client. So to demonstrate this today, we're going to be looking at a widget that I created yesterday called Bingo. And for those of you who are not familiar with Bingo, just really quickly walk through what Bingo is. So traditionally, Bingo, you go to in North America, especially, there are things called bingo halls. You go in, you purchase 1 or 10 bingo cards, and you have a little a dabber or a marker, and you would, as the game goes on, you use this marker to mark things that are called. So I do have a bingo card here. So generally speaking, it is there's 5 columns and 5 rows, so 25 spaces. Each column, so bingo. So there we go, 5 columns, and here's a bingo card here, so I don't have to keep holding that up. So each column has 5 numbers in that column, and they are organized. So it's randomly selected. B is 1 to 15. I'm not going to read those all out. You can see them. So when a number is called, you would say, B14, and then you would mark B14 off. And the point of the game is to try and get a row of 5, or there are different patterns you can also achieve, whether it's 4 corners, or so you get B14, B15, O66, O71. That'd be 4 corners. Some rules say you win that. Sometimes it'll be a square around the whole thing. And you create patterns and lines to win. So to accomplish this, we are using multi-session values for the widget to create the cards and to call out those numbers and store the values in each session. So to do that, we'll be using, again, we're going to go over the storage convention very quickly. We're going to be using JSON to do this. So it's, again, just a reminder of what JSON is. So it's a variable that we'll be using both server side and client side. So we have a master variable that has things like users and numbers that have been called. And then we also have client side JSON variables that will be stored in the client's web browser itself to keep track of that client. So we have different data types we can use. We can use strings, booleans, and we are actually using most of these for this widget. And here's an example. I know I'm going through this very quickly, but it'll make sense when we start looking at the widget. So we're going to switch over to the widget now. Oh dear. I recently changed my screen size, so this, bear with me here for a moment. I have one of those nice, very wide screens, but the widget doesn't like to play nice when we're dealing with multi. There we go. Okay, that wasn't so bad. So we have a widget with all the numbers. We have an administrator page to call the numbers and to check the card. And we also have, I've also created a login. So if everyone, I'm not sure the easiest way to actually communicate this. So I have created a web server here, of course, on the Widget Designer, and through some reverse proxy fun or magic, if you want to look at it that way, I've created a page that everyone attending this webinar live can access. So Janina, can we use the chat in GoToWebinar here? Does that work?
Yes, it does. If you want to, I can just post the link.
Sure. There we go. So I've got, if you open up your chat window, you'll see the URL there. So it's bingo.widget-staging.ca. Because of course, you know, Canada's really great. Then it was a little bit cheaper to buy that domain, so than .com. So what that will do is bring us to a login page. And if you don't have a username and password, so what we can do in Widget Designer with the multi-user sessions, the first thing that we'll notice is anyone who's not sure if this is working for everyone. I'm seeing some questions pop up here. Not seeing the link. Where's the login page? Maybe we can answer to all. Oh, there we go. Does everyone see the link now? Oh, I see what happened here. There we go. So I just posted the link again in the GoToWebinar chat. I had only posted it to basically to myself. So now it's to the entire audience. Okay, so I see, so we can see in the, if we go back to the GoToWebinar page, so you can see the Widget Designer screen, I've gone to Edit and Web Server Settings. And in here, I can see all of the client keys, the session keys that have logged in. So I can see that the link's working, obviously, because I see more than just 2 sessions, my 2 sessions. So I see there are some other people logged in. So this is a new web page. Obviously, none of you have created a username or password for this. So if we go to register, you can create a username and password. So if I can type in Justin Roy as a username and my email address. Now the password, I'm not storing this as plain text. I am hashing this. To be honest, I've spent about 20 minutes doing that work. I wouldn't use your banking password for this. I will be deleting all of these afterwards, and I'll show you how I did the hashing in a few minutes. But again, I wouldn't use your banking password for this. I'm just going to type in password for my password and register. Email address has already been used. Okay, so in creating the login and the registration form, I am doing some logic here. So actually, let's take a look at this logic. So I'm going to go to registration, and in here, we're not going to go through exactly how this is done, just because the point of this isn't how to create a username. The point of this webinar is how to use multi-user sessions, but we'll quickly look at this anyhow. So basically, I am testing, I've got some other functions to call and to search for emails and usernames. So if I've found the email, so here, so I'm searching for the emails here in all of the existing users. If the email exists, then it fails. It says the email has already been used. If the username has already been used, that also fails. And if it doesn't exist, then it creates a new user inside of the user variable that we created here. So I can see that there have been a few people that have registered. That's great. So I'm just going to .ca. I'm just going to create a fake email address here, and now that I'm registered, I am logged in. Now, one thing you'll notice if anyone's cursor is going, so at the very top, you'll notice that your name or your username will be at the top, and all of the bingo numbers are going to be different from my bingo numbers. So to do this, we're using multi-user sessions. So the nice thing, the multi-user values, and also the nice thing that you'll notice as well, which is maybe different from when you've created a widget designer not using Unlimited, is that we are able to navigate to different pages. So if I go back to the login page, your page will not have changed to the login page. So the first setting that we need to change to do this, if we go to Windows, Edit Window, and we're changing the group values to client. So the client is, so it's unique per client. If I change this to global and apply, and if I change to register, it'll push everybody that's connected to these different pages. So I'll go back to client and okay. And now everyone's on this page. So I'm going to go to the admin page. And what I can do now is click next number. And so now we'll see the number is 074. We're highlighting the number 074 on the called numbers list. So if you have 074, you would click on that. I think you need to refresh your page though, or sorry, relog in. I've broken it because I switched everyone's page to the same global values. So my apologies on that. So you'll have to just go back to your multi-user login page and log back in. So I do have another web browser open here. So we can see that these are unique. So here we are. So if I click, so 074, I don't have an 074. So next number, 060 or G60, I do have a G60, and so on. So we can keep going like this with the game until somebody decides, hey, I have a bingo. So in this case, when I created this, because the rules do vary, as I mentioned before, sometimes it's diagonal, sometimes it's, they're always diagonal and always lines, but again, sometimes four corners can win it, or a box, or a pattern, or letters drawn with these numbers. So what you can do is, yes, if you click bingo, if you think you've gotten bingo, so I'll click bingo here in my web browser, in my administrator page that you guys can't access yet. We'll get to that. You can see that, okay, I have two people who've clicked bingo, so I can check this, and I see that I've clicked, no, there we go, someone else has clicked bingo. Perfect. So Roman has clicked two numbers. Now I have enabled it, so I can go back to Justin R and dismiss winner. It clears the page out. So I'm going to pretend that I have bingo on the top row and click bingo. Now I can go to Justin R and check, and I see that so when I'm checking, I'm checking the numbers that have been called against the numbers that have been clicked. So I can see every button or every box that I've clicked. I'm going to dismiss these guys, and Here we go. So I'll check this again, and I can see every box that's been clicked, every label that's been clicked, and I can see that only one of the ones that has been clicked actually matches because it's green. So how we do this? So first, we'll look at the labels, how we have the labels unique to be able to address them for each client. So we have our group values, and I apologize if this is too small to see. I cannot make these windows bigger. So I've created in the group values, again, this option will pop up when you run Widget Designer Unlimited, excuse me, and you can change that from, you can assign a group to this. So I've assigned it to client, and that's great. So now it's assigned to client. So if I create I'm going to go to bingo page. One thing you'll notice as well is when you do click on a button, you'll see global and session change at the very top here. So we can also address other labels to be assignable. So the one on the left, global, changes for everyone in everyone's browser. So you'll see your global button is changing color every time I click, or global label is changing color every time I click, but your session in your web browser won't be changing. That only changes for mine. So if someone else wants to click one of their bingo numbers, there you go. So someone clicked that, and so I see the global one has changed and the session one has not. So if I go to, the nice thing about this is if I go back to here and I say admin page and next number, N39, if someone has, I don't have N39, but if someone else has N39 and they click it, you'll be able to actually see here on global, somebody has N39. It's obviously not necessary, but it's an example of how you would see that change. So when we're clicking these buttons, clicking these labels, what happens is because they're group values, each of these labels has the same script that's clicked, and what happens is it actually I'm storing the cards, the bingo number, the position up in the notes. So I'm just calling that from the notes. So each of these, I can go to this other one here as well. You can see each of these notes are different for each of these cards. And that allows us to have the same macro called from each one. So if you need to change something for 100 buttons or 2 or 1,000, the nice thing is you only need to change it in the macro one time. You don't need to change it in every single button every time. And the way we call back from these notes is by going through. So I should make this a bit easier. So variable, we'll call this card click. Look at the variable column equals, and I can say project.label context widget ID, and this is not unique to multi-user sessions. This is something the widget designer can always do. .notes. So now I can say this variable will be this whole thing. So now if I say debug message column or COL and apply, this is G0. So that's this position here. So if I click that and I open up the debugger, and of course it's not working. There Here we go, testing selected lines. So that you can see that that pops up there. Now I can also say to JSON, or yeah, that's fine, and then get string, and I can just get the 0 position because it's the first position here, and that gives us the column that this is. So if I try this again and test selected lines, we see G. So now I could enter that into here for the first part, column. This one would be get string with the row. And I also send the text of the var text, let's call it, or number equals. And we can also grab, so the reason I'm doing this is demonstrating that I can take the number from the session itself. So we don't need to store these numbers necessarily elsewhere. Directly from the click, directly from the label, we can access those values. So that can go here, and I can now push text to that and apply. So now if I do the debug message, row and text, I can test all of these lines.
Is called number.
Pardon me?
Your text variable is called number.
Number, thank you. And test these lines. Group, oh, of course I can't test them because it has to be from. Now that's something to note as well. If you have group items inside of a macro or a button or a label, you must access that from the web browser, from the DOM. So from the session that is accessing these values, that's the group that it takes. So if I right click and hit test, it's not going to work because not closed. 510. Oh, I see. Project.label. Oh, we don't need this. We don't actually need all of these things. So there we have it. So that's this. That's why it wasn't working. I was clicking on the wrong button. So this is the column, row, and number. Column, row, and number. If someone else clicks their G, the first one up there, this would pop up as well. If someone could do that on their web browser, there you go. So we have again over the internet all the way into Toronto. We have you guys clicking these buttons, and it's populating your unique value into these numbers. And again, we're taking that from here. Now the turning red and turning back to white again, that's also unique to your browser. The way we do that, the way I'm doing that this time, I'm actually storing the clicked value or the non-clicked value in your browser. And I'll show you how we do that. So we're going to click the card. So again, here's the column, here's the row, and here's the number that we're getting from this click. So 47, that's going into here. So we have a card status. So when you logged in your browser, it automatically I had the login script create a card status in your browser, and that at the same time as creating all these random numbers and organizing them in the columns like this. So if I go to card stat, so I can say debug message card click stat. Sorry, card status. Here we go. card status dot to pretty string. So the nice thing about JSON and Widget Designer is when we do have this in JSON, we can print it out like this. So if I don't do to pretty string, it will look like this. It still works. It's just not as human readable. Oh, to string. We don't actually need the to string, but TI string. Maybe if I can spell here. So it's not as nicely readable. This one isn't so bad because it's only a few numbers and letters, but you can see this is the status. So in the B row, none of them are clicked. If I click this one, you can see, oh, it's writing this. Sorry, it's writing this before. Card status. There we go. So now I've just moved that down a different spot. So yes, if you click, you can see that it is 1, comma. So you can see as I click these, they're all 1 now. So all of them are red. And there you go. That's exactly right. So someone else is clicking as well. So we have an if statement in here. I'm going to disable this debug message for now. Feel free to keep clicking. So we have an if statement in here. So when we're clicking, I'm asking for click stat equals the card status, and I'm getting the integer from that. I'm getting these integers from here. So because it's a JSON object, I can get your column. Remember, when we click, we get I'll do G. When we click, we get that value. When you click G, we get its position because it's 0 and its number. So in this case, when I do click G, I'll re-enable this, apply. So I click G, and that's this value right here that I'm getting. So we can look at that saying column 0 plus row, which would also be, sorry, column G plus row. So we're accessing G, and then the row is 0. So we're getting this number, which is 0, and now it's 1. So I'm saying if that number equals 0 in that JSON, then change it to red and set that value to 1. If it equals 1, well, then change it to white and change that value back to 0. And then we have to write it. I'm writing that whole JSON variable back to the browser that clicked the button. And that's how we can access and save data to and from the person's browser, the user's browser, really the user's session. Most of these values are stored in the Widget Designer, but it's tied to the session ID that you've used when you've logged in. Now, in the same sort of way, we're also storing all of these numbers inside of the session values as well. So when you click the Call Bingo button, what we're actually doing is I'm calling so the winner name. So I'm asking for a session value that's also stored in your session or in your browser, which is username. And that can be found right up here in the top center. That's also assigned from your unique user session. And I'm also calling back from your browser again, from your session. I'm calling back your bingo numbers, which are stored as a string. So a lot of times, a lot of programming languages, when you're storing or sending data back and forth to a server, to a client, from a server, from a client, and so on, it likes to, the easiest way to store something is a string. So in something like JavaScript, you would use something called stringify, and then you'd parse JSON, back. So we're doing basically the same thing here. Again, I'm saying that in case anyone is familiar with other programming languages. So in here, I'm actually doing what's called splitting. So these user numbers are stored in your browser as a string, and they're all separated by commas. So it's basically a string with 25 digits, 25 integers separated by commas. So it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we take this and var array equals, sorry, it's a string, so it would be in quotes. And we'll just do this really quick. So if we say debug message, and then array, debug message array, I don't actually need the capital, array dot type. So if I test this, right click and test selected lines, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's a string. So we can also take this and say var array list. I shouldn't have used array the first time. Sorry. We'll do this way, string. And then we'll use array equals string dot split. And then we use whichever character we want to split. So in this case, again, it's a comma. You can use hyphens, you can use spaces, white space. So now if we test this again, so our string is a string 1, 2, 3, 4, and our array will have split that into a list. Array and list are kind of interchangeable. So now we have these addressable. So if we want to access number 3, we would say debug message array, and if we remember the other our variables webinar, we know that we start at 0. Most programming languages are 0 base, so it's 0, 2, 3. So it doesn't exist. Someone just tried to log in. Someone just registered. I still have this in here. Someone just registered and successfully registered. So this means that their username and email doesn't exist. That's fine. So that's where that came from, just explaining that. So if I test lines again, we can see it was stored as a string. I changed it to a list or an array, and I accessed the array at position 2, 0, 1, 0, 1, 2. And that's how above here, this is how we are pulling the local bingo. So that's the bingo numbers stored to your session and splitting that into a list. I'm also pulling back the card status, which again is a JSON. It's a JSON object stored to the session as well. But again, Widget Designer automatically converts that JSON object to a string. So when we pull it back, we need to change it back to a JSON, which is very easy with just .2JSON. And I'm setting a new variable, a new JSON variable that's local, so I can assign the numbers, the winner's name, the card status, and everything to that JSON variable, and then I'm adding it to a global variable. And then of course, access denied. And then I am assigning that to this drop-down menu, so we can see who has clicked the bingo. So I'm parsing the list of winners, pulling the username, and then putting the username in here. So now when we click this check card, we can again, I'm not going to go through all the logic of the game itself. I'm just showing how we are using the list and the values that were stored and pushed. We're pulling it from the browser, from the session, pushing it to a JSON object, and then I can parse that JSON object here. We can get, if anyone has any questions about the actual bingo game itself, we can go into that in a bit more depth later on. But this is just to demonstrate really how I'm storing values to a session, pulling values back out of the session, and then parsing those values as if they were stored any other way. So we can again click next number and pushing those to the browser. So I also have another page, and I'm moving very fast. We only have so much time. If we click on the examples button, I've now enabled that button. So we have a page that has, we have a few different things going on here. So if we can see, if I click on, I'm gonna just log in here on my iPad as well. So if anyone wants to click on the display client key here on your web page, what's going to happen? It's going to show us this is your client key. The second one is your session key. It's showing that it's an external IP address, and the reason it's showing the same IP address for everyone is because I'm using a reverse proxy. It's just another computer sitting on my desk. What a reverse proxy does, I can securely let people access my network. I'm not opening my network or my computer directly up to the internet. That you can do that if you're doing testing and so on right through your router. That's easy. But in this case, because I have many ports open or many servers running, what the reverse proxy does is allows a URL like the one we're using today, bingo.widgetstaging.ca. It redirects it to the port that I'm running here, which again, we opened this up earlier. I'll open it up again. I'm running on port 8888 on my laptop. So it's just redirecting everybody to that port safely. So because of that, we're seeing this IP address. I could pass your IP address through using that reverse proxy, but because I'm also running an iPad on my local network as well, I can also see if it's on a local network, you can see what each client's IP address is. If you need to track a device down and so on, you can do it that way. And also, we have so these are some additional things that we can do with session values. So we can have voting with drop-down menus. You can see that there are 4 voters here. I guess everyone's clicked red. That's fine. There we go. So everyone goes to blue. We can all see that wins out. And we can also, so on the left side, we have a global fader. So I can move this on my iPad. I can move this in the Widget Designer. You guys can move it in your web browser, and it'll change on my screen. The left fader. So if I just actually click here, and now I can create global. And we can do local. So now if you move this one, we can see the average here. Now what we can do is also create a new button here. And I'm just going to copy and paste fader average. We're going to do fader max. So in this case, we're going to say fader1.value, and we can access all the group values that exist. So group values dot value dot, and these are all the things that are available to us. So I can see how many of these faders exist in other groups. So we can take this. I'll copy this down to the next row, and fader max. I'm just going to demonstrate this and apply. Now, if we click this button, count, we can see there are 5 people logged in and 5 people who have changed this fader. But let's do something a little more interesting, I guess, and we'll change it to max. So we can see somebody has changed this. And I'll change this as well, max. So someone has the fader all the way to the top. If everyone takes it down, we can actually see who has the maximum. We can do the same for minimum. Change this to min. And again, we can look at all the other ones here. We have, so we can actually get a list of all the values, so we can join them together in a list. I don't know if that's going to work actually on this on here, but we'll try it. We might have to parse it a different way. I don't think we can show arrays in labels. So if I click here, oh, clear. Yeah, an error occurred. So we can so join to, and we can say split. Let's try it. Let's try it in the so we'll say debug message fader 2 dot group values dot value dot join, and we'll do hyphens. Let's say we'll join it with hyphens. So apply that, and we can say here block element was not closed. Of course, we need one more bracket. Apply and join. Must be for
That's
max.
the first line.
Yes, of course. So here we go. We have 0, 85, 241, point whatever. We can also yeah, so we can see all of the, thank you, Janina. So we can see all of the values that have been selected. We can do the same thing on the drop down if we'd like. We can say here, we can change this to vote, color vote drop down. And just for reference, color is spelled correctly with a U. If you don't like it, you can do your own webinar. So now we can click join down here and pressing script object member. Oh, we need index. So we can see most people have voted for 1 here. So 0, 1. Most people are on blue. We can go down to red, and we see that one of the sessions is at 2. I can change this on the iPad as well. And okay, now we have 6 voters because I just changed it on the iPad also. And that's 3. So we have all of these options available to us, and you can use these to Selena has never loved bingo so much. And we also have a little chat thing over here in the right. So as you can see, your username is there, so don't don't type anything inappropriate. So I can say hello world. It's unique to my text input, and I can hit send, and then it automatically updates. I hope this is all making sense. Again, I know this is very fast. There's a lot to cover here. I'm just trying to, trains are cool. So are whales. Whales are very, I know all of your, Janina, all of your profile pictures are all about whales. So, you know. So if there are any specific questions, we've got a few more minutes left. We don't want to go too much over an hour here. And emojis aren't supported in this, as far as I know. We can try. But yeah, are there any specific questions? You can either, I mean, you could ask in either place in the GoToWebinar, or you can enter the question right inside of the Widget Designer if you'd like.
In GoToWebinar, we currently don't have any questions. That was a lot of stuff you have covered. That needs to be processed first.
Yes, no, definitely, and yeah, I do understand that you know, I did jump all over the place. I did not go over a lot of things. Again, this was more about multi-user sessions and sessions in Widget Designer than it was about a game. I just decided to make the game partially because the reason I have this this bingo card is because we had a very nice, very productive long meeting last week where we had all the attendees were playing bingo, and the joke was made, why did we ship these everywhere? Why didn't we just build a widget? And then someone said, oh, that would take too long to do, and I had time yesterday afternoon, so I made a bingo game. So it's a pretty basic bingo game. You have to have the user verify things and so on, but maybe I'll make it a little bit more complex in the future, and we'll start using those in our meetings perhaps. So yeah, I think that's everything we had to cover. So, and Janina, can you think of anything else? Also, everyone, so just so you know, as you can see, I've been using Widget Designer for since version 1. Revision 4 was actually the actual first real release. I've been using it since then, I think 11 years now, give or take. And I still have the web browser, or sorry, the help file open every time I'm using Widget Designer for anything more than just creating a label and creating things like that. I'm not saying don't reach out to support, but definitely search the help file. It helps a lot. So there's a great spot in here, session values. The help file is very helpful, and so you know as well, when we're creating things inside of the Widget Designer. So when we say so WD fader up, all of these things in here are actually basically pulled from the help file. So if you can find it in here, or if you can't find it in here, it's all related to the help file. So because of that, our help file actually needs to have this functionality in the Widget Designer. That means our help file actually has to be pretty complete. So unless I'm mistaken, Janina.
Nope, that's completely correct.
So that actually it's great. It actually forces us to keep our help file up to date, so we can have all of these features and all these rich features and the autocompletes that a lot of programming interfaces have. Most IDEs nowadays have autocompletes if you're running an HTML or JavaScript or Python. I mean, don't write in Python, but anything like that, we have auto-completing things. So we also do have a great spot in here. I have another page that I had open that did have a more complete list of what you can use, what widgets you can use for here. Sessions and session values.
It's called group values. You find it in WebServer.
So we have, here's a list of all the things that are assignable to groups. So color pickers and coders. We've seen faders, we've seen labels. And what I've actually done in this widget, instead of creating custom scripts, I have created labels instead, because custom scripts are not assignable to a group. Custom scripts are always global. So to be able to assign unique numbers to these labels by did that through the group values. I also have other widgets that I've created for clients where we need them to be multilingual. So there's a drop-down menu where you can select. In this particular case, it's English, French, and Spanish. There's about 30 pages that they can access. At any given time, there's between 50 and 120 users. Each user can have their own language selected. And when they select a language, it assigns a unique, or not a unique, it's not unique, obviously, it's already translated. We're not generating the translation. We're storing it in a web browser, or sorry, we're storing it in a JSON variable. So when you click on a button, it will, or so when you click on a language, I have all of the labels stored. So it would say username. This would be stored in that variable login username, and then the English, Spanish, and French versions of that. And because it's dynamic inside of a JSON file, they can update the translation from their own, from the widget designer itself. They don't actually need to, oh, excuse me. You don't actually need to have a developer log in to update their translations. So that's just one example of why you'd use the labels. Now the way they highlight, the way they pop up, we're using CSS for that. So you can use your own custom CSS files. I have created a more kind of, I guess, intensive CSS, dynamic CSS file that you can edit per, I'll close this and move this over, so you can edit this per button. You don't have to go in and change the whole thing. So we can say FF, and now we change the register button to a little bit more blue. I believe this will be, we've talked to our product manager and about having this included in some of our next releases. So this will be more accessible to others as we go. So we can see, we can customize things very nicely there. So yeah. And if we don't have any questions, I think we'll just leave this up for a few minutes. I'll leave this widget running for a little while. If anyone wants to play or explore it, you're more than welcome. But after today, that URL will be taken down. The bingo.widgetstaging.ca will be taken down. If you have any specific questions about this or how something was done, feel free to email myself or to email support, and we can definitely help out with that, especially when it comes to something like password management. That's something that's obviously very what's I'm looking for? Very sensitive, because you can have people using their banking password and so on. So I'm actually never looking at this password. I'm always encoding it. So very quickly, what I'm doing with that, so I send that encode password to here. I do have a secret variable, which is a string of randomized letters. So in here, they're all randomized. And what I do from here is I encode these into bytes, so they're all numbers. It's a list of numbers. I randomize those a little bit, and then encode it by adding and subtracting and multiplying the encoded numbers from the password and the encoded numbers from the randomized text. And then I return so if I do try this now and say I'm going to type in password, so that's how the password is stored. And you can't, without the secret phrase, the randomized numbers, you can't decode this, because all I'm doing, I'm not ever decrypting the password. And this is like most web browsers, we don't have a encryption like this built into Widget yet. But what it does is it actually, I always compare. So when you type in the password in the login screen, I also encode the password from the login screen and I compare it with the one that's stored, and this is the way it looks when it's stored as well. So without that secret passphrase, there's no way to decrypt it. And so if I were to change this even by one character, this password or this secret here, if I change this even by one character, the entire passphrase, everything stored, won't work anymore, which is on purpose. So yeah, so there's specific things like that. And again, I made the password thing in about 20 minutes or so. I know there's probably a better way to actually hash that, but yeah, that's what I did for this web browser, and sorry, for this session. And yeah, thank you very much for your attention today, and I hope this was useful and educational, and kind of just at least showed some of the capabilities of what the widget can do with multi-user sessions. And again, any specific questions and comments, please direct them to support or the forum. That works as well. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.